Ariana Lady Bosco here of Palms Up Academy. Welcome to Puff, Palms Up Flash Fest. It's where we explore 5 creators at 5 p.m., hence 5 at 5. Palms Up Academy provides an intersection for the marginalized and the privileged, nurturing diversity and evolving humanity through the transformative power of art. We do that in a few ways. This is one of our programs. Today, we will be watching a music video by MaJiK MC, a poem by Kooki, a PSA by One Down and Palms Up Academy on anti-blackness amongst Filipinx, a song by Madima, and an animation by filmmaker Danski Tang. Following the program, we will be having a conversation amongst artists. Stay tuned. Enjoy the program.
Gold as fuck, skin gold as fuck, yeah, my skin gold as fuck. I said my skin gold as fuck, gold as fuck, skin gold as fuck, yeah, my skin gold as fuck. With all this royal in my blood. I've been on the hush about my skin tone. Never get fucked while I been caught. With a Kooki chink, always knew my name. Ain't monkey or gorilla, bitches King Kong. So they know me out here, I be hungry out here. Buy my money out here, check the work. Check. My homies out here, ain't just doctors out here. They some mobsters out here doing dirt. I got Asians that fucking record dance flow. I got Asians that acting fucking ass up. I know Asians that kill and Asians that healing. Yes, I know Asians that soft. Fucking math problem more to start. See, my sisters ain't objects, my ninjas. What for profits? I'ma earn it doing art, she gon' make it, that's the box. See my ticket out your pocket. Gold as fuck. Skin gold as fuck, yeah, my skin gold as fuck. I said my skin gold as fuck, gold as fuck. Skin gold as fuck, yeah, my skin gold as fuck. With all this rap in my blood, ain't nothing but kings in my lineage, living out the dreams of an immigrant. Ain't nothing but kings in my lineage, living out the dreams of an immigrant. Ain't nothing but kings in my lineage, living out the dreams of an immigrant. Right, honor to the family, love till I can't breathe. You never take me out my element. Used to boycott my own identity. Anything Asian I consider my enemy. Character schemes, American dream, and the prototype was always John F. Kennedy. Blonde hair and blue eyes. That's what every hero look like. Who I supposed to idolize when my people barely getting leads. 33 years since bruised down, talking life. 4 billion plus people. Styles, different cultures, I dare you tell me that I can't drive just one more time. The days of us taking a backseat is over. Pass the mic, I rap as nice as any and every single one of y'all. If you're thinking probability and all the possibilities, the math alone should tell you we done it all. Gold as fuck, skin gold as fuck, yeah, my skin gold as fuck. I said my skin gold as fuck, gold as fuck. Skin gold as fuck, yeah, my skin gold as fuck. With all this rap in my blood, ain't nothing but kings in my lineage, living out the dreams of an immigrant. Ain't nothing but kings in my lineage, living out the dreams of an immigrant. Ain't nothing but kings in my lineage, living out the dreams of an immigrant. Right, honor to the family, love till I can't breathe. You never take me out my element. gold as fuck. Skin gold as fuck, yeah, my skin gold as fuck. I said my skin gold as fuck, gold as fuck. Skin gold as fuck, yeah, my skin gold as fuck. With all this royal in my blood, blood.
I had a plan. I would make them understand that our history never began with our enslavement. We were never born on this planet as product. We were people. And we came from families and communities, villages and townships. We had mothers and fathers, sisters and brothers. We were doctors and scholars. Shoot, we were rulers and workers. And then we were snatched. We were snatched, kidnapped, stolen, brought to this land we call America, where we were sold into slavery. Our language and culture ripped from our tongues. Our costumes and customs beaten out of us. This place, at that time, is when we began to be defined by whatever warped, sick image came up in our master's mind through cognitive distance. He needed to be able to sleep at night. This didn't happen for just a minute, a few years, a few decades, hundreds of years. Mothers and fathers had tears. We were abused and tortured as a people. And this brings us up to today. And here we are. And you want us to leave all that history behind. Forget it all happened. And yet we notice that he is always looking behind for us, constantly in fear that we might attack, that we might seek some kind of payback or revenge. And he should, because he has it coming. The sinful debt of the forefathers will be paid in full by his descendants. So here we are today, in the midst of a revolution. And now with everyone having a camera in their hand by way of cell phone, everything will be live streamed, every pain striking blow. And now I am afraid. I am afraid because when I look into the eyes of my youngest son, I see an anger. I see frustration, and I know that when they ask him to go, he will go. He will fight. For all of the ancestors left behind, he will fight. And so I pray to whatever God will listen. I pray to whatever ancestor will listen, because somebody's baby will die tonight. Somebody's child will lose in this fight. And is it being selfish of me to pray that that child is not mine?
Anti-Blackness is like Filipino food. Some of it is found in our colonized past, and it's always been present growing up in our family traditions, our community culture, and even in the media we consume.
There's this idea, particularly in the Philippines, that if you're darker, you're working out in the fields, right? If you're light-skinned, you don't have to work in the field. So there's classism that is tied into the color of one's skin.
Filipinos are naturally dark. In fact, the indigenous people of the Philippines valued their dark skin as spiritual and celebrated through religious ceremonies.
How do we value dark skin now?
Am I beautiful even if I'm dark?
Why are we told that lighter skin makes us more beautiful?
If your standard of beauty is white, then how do you look at me?
Is my nose too big?
Mom, you better talk to Dante. He said when he makes money, he's gonna fix his nose.
Yep, that's me and my mom, apparently quoting me. Have you ever been a part of seemingly harmless, funny banter? Anti-blackness is a learned behavior.
When we say we're just old-fashioned, it's widely used, whether we know it or not, as in to excuse our anti-blackness behavior. At a family dinner, my grandfather was sitting across the room from me, and we were talking about having kids, and he said, just as long as they're not black. And it was even more alarming because it was excused right away, because Grandpa's a good man.
Can good people be anti-black?
Sometimes even good people can carry anti-black behaviors, and it has to do with the culture we grew up in.
Anti-black attitudes can be as small as pointing out one's darkness as a problem rather than a beautiful trait.
The role of anti-blackness is beyond pervasive in our families and our communities. So much so that most of us are silent about it.
Why did I grow up feeling like I had to change myself to fit in?
The assimilation factor that many of our Filipino families adopted when they came to the States made it even harder for them, for us, for you, to look in the mirror and say goodbye to the whiteness that you see there.
This is about fully examining and interrogating ourselves first, then our family, friends, and community.
These conversations must begin at home, not just on social media where your inner circle already agrees with you, but with family members who might not share the same perspectives when it comes to race and privilege.
We as Filipinos have the privilege that we will never face the same racism as Black people do. We need to recognize that privilege and acknowledge that our struggles are tied to Black struggles.
Where do you think our civil rights came from?
Filipinos should care because our very rights and freedoms as Filipino Americans are a direct result of the Black liberation movements of the past and of the present.
You can take action on a larger scale by supporting the Movement for Black Lives, the Bulacan Center for Filipino Studies, Lead Filipino, AAPI Women Lead, Kabataan Alliance, and the National Alliance for Filipino Concerns, or NAFCON. By support, I do mean money. I also mean people power. I also mean your voice and your story. Bring your lolos and your lolas, your manangs and your manongs, bring them all to the party. Let's learn together. And if you are Black and Filipinx like me, tell your story, at least to your family. It is 100% on you to put that noise, the systemic racism behind you and walk into a more loving, accepting version of you who's ready to co-create a brand new world with the rest of us.
So here we are. We have the ability to be the ancestors that our descendants will look to for guidance, to be on the right side of history, to be the first discussion against whitening soaps, to be that constant affirmation to our children that their noses, hair, skin, and body types are beautiful. And when that time comes, and believe me it will if it hasn't already, that we're faced with the question by our Black brothers and sisters, does my life matter? What will you say? Black lives matter.
Do you see me differently because I openly support Black lives?
Do you only want Black music, but not Black people?
Don't we all just want our kids to be safe?
Why are we told that lighter skin makes us more beautiful?
If I'm Black, does that make me less Filipino?
This one's for Brianna. She feels a rumble down below, holds back her cries, but she knows blind, leading blind, cannot see. So when we pass, she shouts out her pain. I'm at the fault line, darling. Breaks me this bout, I'm coming and send these worlds crashing down. If you take my hand, we'll find new ground. She gives us diamonds despite pressure, but the stones are not made for your pleasure. They are made to exist, gifting us colors too vibrant to miss. I'm at the borderline, darling. Breaks me that's about time coming and send these walls crashing down. I know the change is coming. I'll catch you if you're falling. Just take my hand, I'll be around. If you take my hand, we'll find new ground. So many run away. Please be the one that stays. Just stay. Stay. Please stay with me. 'Cause I'm at the borderline, darling. Breaks me this bounce, I'm coming and setting these walls tumbling down. I know a change is coming. I'll catch you if you're falling. Just take my hand, I'll be around. If you take, please take my hand, and I swear we'll find new ground.
因為你係我最親近嘅人啊嘛，咁我覺得我都想話俾你知咯。即係我
你應該早早講我聽啊！
Hi, everybody.
Hello, hello.
Gosh, there's so much I wanna bring up, but just moving backwards from what we just saw with Danski, and welcome to chime in. the imagery is so powerful in it. I made note of even the hallway towards the beginning. We're watching her walk down the hallway, and even in the capturing of her body language, you can see that she's lost, and it's so interesting because it's such a nuanced. I like, how do you do that? Because we're not seeing, and in fact, when she turns around, she has no face, so you're not really. It's really about being able to stand body, which is all of us artists doing that, whether it's in a music video or in a song or as we're trying to portray these things in poetry, but you're able to capture it with animation. How do you do that? Do you just sit and study people? What happens there?
I mean, technically for that shot, I used a video reference. I used video reference, just this kid walking in the hallway, but I mean, I only use the reference for the keyframes, and I fill in all of the in-betweens, and so that I can create however motion I want, that as long as it's in the walking frame. Yeah, and then I think it's pretty intuitive for me to make animation that's related to body and things like that. Mm-hmm.
So we all have pieces, kind of the subject of the entire, this inaugural Puff. Thank you all again, all for being here. Is the intergenerational trauma that we all have to endure. And my question for all of you creators in that is, well, first of all, identifying that intergenerational trauma, right? And at what point in your own kind of life narratives did you decide, you know what, this is my purpose, this is what I want to do? Whether it was this particular piece, but whether it was like music for the first time or wanting to do social justice things, or for some of us, it's just like being born into this. I mean, what was it for you? What was that moment where you said, you know what, this is how I want to contribute to the world? Or was it a moment? I don't know. Let's start with you, Leo.
Yeah.
One down, Leo.
I think that's such an intriguing question, because I think the important part to note is that all of us contribute to this idea of undoing generational trauma in a different way. And I feel like as a filmmaker and with One Down, I really understood where my part in this movement is. And I think what's so beautiful about all this different pieces of art and these different works is we get to see a glimpse of how everyone kind of takes that and how we adjust it. So for me, I look at it from the perspective of a Filipino, and what are the different traumas that we experience as a Filipino. And for me personally, it had a lot to do with my skin color. And that's why I really resonated, for example, with MaJiK's music video, Gold as Fuck. Like, you know, I get those same things that we see in this video where don't go outside, or, you know, I have tried skin whitening things that I got from the grocery store, and like that really was my mentality. I have growing up, and it really had a lot of doing this video. And as we continue to do these conversations, you know, I'm still going through this motion of unlearning these traumas that have been placed onto me from, you know, people that I grew up with, family members, and also seeing that throughout the Filipino community. So that kind of is the generational trauma. And for me, the way I approach it is through storytelling. And so you see it through just the opening of that scene. Anti-Blackness is like Filipino food. You're not typically going to hear that. Like, that's not really the normal way that you would describe anti-Blackness, but that's how we enter. Why? Because Filipinos, our culture loves food. And I think that's the last part that I see in every one of us here on this panel. We have this way that we express how we talk about these traumas. And even for Danski, like, I love the way that it's a conversation with your mom. And I think all of us, as we explore our own undoing of generational trauma, there's a way that we do it personally that works for us.
Yeah, like
I was even thinking about in ways all these intersections that happen between these pieces, but particularly even with a piece that was like Danski, where it's like it's very evident how much that maternal bond can just be like passed down, and there's all these expectations of you as a woman, even culturally, that are very different, yet at the same time there's certain things that are the same. I think that's just one thing that kind of I was feeling that was a thread throughout, a thread that was throughout like a lot of the female pieces that we saw tonight, is that we just kind of get this feeling of just like we have these roots that we are trying to stay so close to, but at the same time there's all this growth that needs to happen, and it's very necessary. Is just like how we actually accomplish that. How do we go through like the first steps of solving this trauma, or like resolving the trauma rather. And I think it's really interesting that each one of these pieces kind of just like, it's the conversation starter. It's the one where it's like, we've been having these conversations, but these pieces are really great about just bringing it up and bringing it to the forefront.
Yeah. For me, I feel like the moment of realizing, that I want to talk about these things or do these things is particularly of the expectations that are put onto you by society and by your parents, and the conditioning that we receive. Being a hip hop artist is definitely not something that my mom wanted me to do. And you struggle with wanting to appease your parents and wanting to make them proud, but then you struggle to fight yourself and who you are in that, and then you have to let that go of being okay with being a disappointment to them, because that's not your narrative anymore. And you find your own narrative and your own truth, and then the way we explore that is through our medium and through our art forms, to figure out who we are and to try and understand what we want to do and what we want to contribute, which is to celebrate, ourselves and celebrate each other, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
One of the things that stood out to me in watching all of the pieces, one of the veins that wove itself through all the pieces for me, is the cultural trauma. Regardless to what your culture is, if you're a person of color, there's going to be this unspoken trauma that affects how the culture deals with relationships, whether it be man and wife, or mother to child, or just how you view yourself in the greater society. How we move through space is all been affected by how we as individual cultures are traumatized by the larger culture. Whether that means we learn how to speak different languages when we're outside of the home versus how we speak inside the home, or how our parents expect us to transcend their own trauma by trying to get us to step away from our own cultures as much as we can, and to assimilate to the large culture, a culture that doesn't want to accept us regardless to whether we assimilate or not, and how that in itself is traumatic. And then that still feeds into the cultural and generational trauma that we as people of color still have to deal with and navigate. And I saw that in everybody's piece. Even with the bravado of MaJiK's Gold as Fuck, there's still that still proving to oneself that I'm worth it, kind of, despite the fact that the larger culture wants to minimize, marginalize, et cetera, et cetera. So that's my 2 cents.
Oh, I love it. So Kooki, let me ask you, and for everyone else, but I want to start with Kooki on this, and of course, Phil, welcome to converse amongst yourselves on it as well. Obviously, we see a PSA on anti-Blackness. We see this bravado of gold as fuck from a culture that MaJiK, has adopted from the Black culture. We see this controlled environment on Danski's piece, there's so many social things in Danski's speech that's controlled, and we all have that reality within the socialness. But in all that, and in this time, what does solidarity look like to you, Kooki?
In regards to what? What kind of solidarity?
In regards to humanness, in regards to Blackness, to you. What does someone, your tribe, your people, your oh, someone's getting a phone call.
I know, sorry.
What does showing up for, no worries. What does showing up for Kooki? I don't want you to speak for the whole Black,
Right.
you know, that's no one's responsibility to be speaking for the entire Black race, but what does it look like to you, solidarity, showing up for Kooki in your skin, in your truth?
You know, I'm a woman of a certain number of years. And the thing that we're going through now in this time is not new to me. I've seen it before. I've seen the ruffling of feathers, the boiling over of emotion that expresses itself through anger and pushback and aggression. And then it goes back to this neutral, numb, business as usual. For me, I am this very quiet boil right now. I don't want to explain myself. I don't want to be your get out of guilt-free zone or friend, because I know this Black chicken, she said, I don't want to have to Black-splain anything. I don't want to make you feel better about whatever guilt you feel about what's going on with Black lives. For me, pick up a book, educate yourself, and then ask me a question. Because I have no fucks to give. I am not here for in that way. And I don't want to even begin to pretend that that's the right way to feel, or that feeling is going to move anything forward and make everybody feel warm and fuzzy. Right now, I don't care. I don't want to hear it. I don't want to participate in making everybody else feel good. I don't. I'm just going to let everybody else figure it out. I have fewer years ahead of me than there are behind me. And I'm not going to spend those years trying to bring everybody up to speed if they cared before. If you care now, then there's enough documentation out there. There are enough YouTubes, there are enough books, there are enough documentaries. I'm not the one to come to. So that's probably not a very PC answer to hear. But it's just, I cannot begin to tell you how many times I've had to try to explain to other people what it means. I can only explain what it means to me, how it feels to me. And I just am not here for it. You know, the people that I love know I love them. And I can accept everybody the way they are, the way they come to me. And the people who love me accept me the way I come. So I'm not explaining anything else past that. Everybody else who's trying to get some education needs to find a different way to do it. I'm not your girl.
Copy that.
Yeah. I feel it. I feel that in your poem. You know, when you talk about your son or your sons, your youngest son, and that fear, and that praying for his safety. That that really resonated with me, because as you said, you've been through this yourself, and it's just
Here
the
we
worst
go
place
again.
to be. Here we go again, over the same thing.
And now it's my children on the line. And when I speak of my youngest son in particular, him separate from all my other children, I have 3 sons. My youngest son, it's palatable, his anger. It's almost, and it's almost as though he doesn't even really know why. It's like it's an inherited anger, an inherited frustration that he has no control over. And so when the foot soldiers are called to fight,
Right.
he's gonna go. He's gonna be the one out there, off, breaking windows, throwing rocks, and I'm afraid for him. I'm afraid for him.
Yeah, I'm, as you know, Kooki, as most of you know, I'm a single mom of 2, and I'm new to this game. Yeah, especially, I mean, obviously I'm a minority, I'm Filipino, but having a half Black child and all of this happening, I've obviously been aware and grew up in the culture, but having a child who's half Black now, I've definitely been asking myself these questions, and also wary of what she's inheriting from past generations, and also just socially in the world. And that's something that also resonated with me, even though it's a different story and different culture with Danski's piece, because of this, these things that we inherit from our parents. I mean, and that's what the PSA is about as well, right? And that's the pushback on MaJiK's piece, and that's Maddie's piece, Madima's piece, singing through that pain. So Danski, in your piece, do you feel like you had inherited anything from your mother? I mean, it's a very strong piece of what you rejected from your mother, but what was that journey like for you to, actually, Leo One Down posted a great post about it. What was it? I don't want to misquote it. You just posted it. Go ahead and say it.
Oh, it's shoot, hold on, give me 1 moment.
Yeah, sorry, I'm putting you on the spot. It was really great to kind of encompass what we are talking about today.
Yeah, the post was, when generational trauma runs in the family, we are where it runs out.
Yes. So can you speak to that a little bit, Danski? Like, what was there a moment, or did you always know that you're going to push back from this? Because it seemed like such a controlled environment that your mother was living in, and that she, inadvertently would have to pass down to you because she didn't know, right? And that's what your piece is about. But when did you decide to turn the other way, or say, you know what, I'm actually not?
I think I moved to America 4 years ago, and then I think that was the first time I was starting to think that before that I was just trying to run away from all of those violence and miscommunications. Yes, and then but I think it was amazing when it was at the moment that I showed her the film, that we watched it together, and she wasn't able to speak out in any way because she's just a middle school English teacher for 20 years, and the society was pretty oppressive, and so we watched it together, and she heard her voice, and she says, "Oh, that's my voice," and I said, "Yes, your voice is gonna be heard by thousands of people." And it was just so amazing, and I never thought that was something that I can achieve. It's not like any award or anything that, or fame or whatever can compete. Yeah, so it was the most rewarding part of the process.
I love that. Madima, with you and your craft, and being of mixed race, in this culture, what are times where you felt like you belonged in this world and you didn't belong in this world?
It always varies, right? I think that all of us growing up being POC or even just like BIPOC, like you have to learn how to code switch all the time, no matter where you are in your life. You have to learn how to adapt in order to survive. And there are times that like I can look back on the friends that I made in high school, the friends that I made in college, where I felt completely accepted. But it was largely because I would assimilate to what was going on in my environment. And then I can even feel it whenever I am around my Filipino family members that are more based in the culture, more versed in the culture, that like I'll even find myself, the speech patterns that I take on then become like more cadenced than they usually are, or I don't say certain things because it's not completely respectable in the right space, or I do get to say certain things around my friends. It's a very interesting balance, especially whenever you're mixed race, that you have to be okay with not having a single category. You have to be okay with not necessarily belonging anywhere, but belonging to yourself. And I think that's something that's really interesting about just like generational trauma, is that it's this constant work of accepting who you are in the grand scheme of things, and then making it easier for the next generation to not have to navigate it as much or think about it as hard. You know, like I think that I am constantly in a state of evolution just because of who I am. I'm constantly pushing the needle back and forth, but as I've gotten older, I've gotten okay with it just being who I am, everything that is about me, and that is enough. And I think the thing that I always just want to stress whenever we're even just talking about just the sentiments of anti-Blackness that we're seeing, or the sentiments of like anti-immigrants that we're seeing, is that you have to be okay with just removing yourself from the equation and not trying to project your experience onto somebody else, you know, because no one has the same experience. There are similar threads, but you can't just assume that, like whenever somebody says, it's kind of like, oh, if they just work a little bit harder, or if like, oh, if their English was just a little bit better, it's like, no, there are things, there are obstacles that we either inherit or that we don't have the wherewithal to change, that there are things that like need to be taken down in order to do that. We need to be able to put in the work to do that. But that also has to take your own personal, either just like your self-preservation needs to be something that you have to really consider about, like what is most important about that. What parts of yourself are you not willing to compromise in order to navigate through your life? Whereas what are the things that you are willing to sacrifice in order to make things better? So I don't know.
I love that.
There's a lot to
well, so, no, there's a lot to unpack, and I know we only have a half hour, but less than that now. So I think I want to somewhat end with this question. So if so much, hopefully you guys can agree that in part, you know, the environment and the society that we live in, and the obstacles that arise, and the trauma shapes who we are, builds character, even the code switching, because even in that there's some joy in it. Like you're around these people, you're around those people, and you can't. But so how much of that is actually art and character? And if none of that exists, who are we really? If none of these obstacles existed, if we didn't have to fight all this social or generational trauma, if we weren't seen as, the model minority for some of us, or for some of us just been oppressed all our lives, with like all of those things, what if that didn't exist? What if we weren't pushing back on any of this? What would we look like? What would our art look like? What would, and I don't even know, that might be too big of a question, because so much of who we are is because of all the things that have occurred in our lives. Who wants to have a grab at it? Leo, you look like you Leo, do you have something to say about that? Like if we actually didn't have these traumas and obstacles, like who are we then? Who are we really?
I think that's such an intriguing question. And the best way I can say it is probably my favorite quote that I try to live by is, we are standing on the shoulders of giants. And so what I mean by that is, all of us, we share trauma in a sense. And the way I look at it is, the trauma that I inherit, I also inherit a lot of wisdom, and I also inherit a lot of healing, and I inherit a lot of empowerment because of the people who came before me and had to face these certain things. So for example, when I think of solidarity across different communities of color, I'm thinking, the labor movement with Cesar Chavez and Lariat Leong between Filipinos and Latino workers. I'm thinking the I Hotel, and when Black Panthers stood there for the Filipino residents. And I think there's so many moments in history in which we did find ourselves in these incidents and these events that are traumatic, but it also kind of defined who we became, and it defines who I am as a filmmaker and how I want to go about the art that I create. So while I do see that generational trauma isn't, you know, a light thing, and I do think there is a side to it that makes us who we are, and that's kind of the silver lining that I like to focus on.
There's that concept of like that Japanese art of a shattered bowl, and then they like paint over the cracks with gold, right? I can't remember what the name. That's what it is. Jerry just said what it was.
Wasabi.
I can't hear Jerry at all, so like I can't even pronounce it correctly. I'm not even gonna try, honestly.
I think he said Abi Sabi. Did I say it right?
Wabi sabi.
Wabi Sabi.
That's what it is. Now you got it. Right. So the whole concept of it is just kind of like thinking about it as like good damage, and all that the artwork is, it's just cracks in the bowl that are highlighted by gold strands, and that you see it, so that all of the things that were wrong with the bowl are apparent to the people that view it. But as it turns out, it just makes it more beautiful. It makes the piece more original. And I think that's what's so interesting about people as a whole, is that like we do have all these experiences that certainly shape us, but it's not something that necessarily needs to break us down completely. It's something that we as artists know how to translate into something to present to the world, to show how we grow and like what we've made. I think that's also like why MaJiK's it's so hard.
MaJiK?
Yeah, I think being an artist, as we all are, I think part of who we are as artists is wanting to create better art, create better craft, and better ourselves. So if we didn't have that trauma, I think that would still be at the core of who we are, wanting to still be better and create more of a better world, whatever that world looks like. Be its different challenges. How do we do this better? How do we make this better? So maybe less struggle, maybe less pain, and even more joy, even more expression, more freedom of expression, more space of expression. That's to answer the original question of what would we be without our trauma.
Mm-hmm.
Danski, I am looking forward to the day. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm looking forward to the day when I can enjoy the full salad that we are. Like I can look at a bowl of vegetables and tomato be a tomato and not to pretend to be an avocado. Like I can actually enjoy the tomato being a tomato in the bowl, and we don't have to worry about blending into this mosh, unrecognizable taste. Like I can appreciate everything that every ingredient adds to the taste of the salad. I don't have to be anything other than who I am, and it's appreciated. It's not marginalized or dummied down or called something else to make somebody else feel better about tasting it. That you can just say, oh my God, this Black girl did this amazing thing and it was amazing. You know, this Filipino girl added this such and such and it was amazing. And I don't have to dummy it down or make it more palatable for anybody. It can come with its full flavor intact and it be appreciated. That's what I'm looking forward to. If I did not have to live with trauma, I could call a thing a thing.
Yeah.
That's it.
Mm-hmm.
I totally agree. I totally agree. Yes, and I also think that pain it's inevitable, and it's the whole experience of being a human. So, and that's that's what artists live for. That's what it's for.
Hard, y'all. Life is so hard.
I hear it. No, that's what I was gonna say. It is already hard enough as it is. Just, you know, especially now. Obviously, Kooki is much more of a veteran at this than I am, but coming into my 5 and 7 year old, disappointment happens anyways. Pain happens anyways. And they write about it. My daughter's a little poet. My son's freestyling songs about just things being unfair or not understanding. And yes, we talk about social things, but just like within our own household, life ain't always fair. You got to learn discipline. That is the same pain. It's such a shame that we have to feel it on these larger controlled levels in our environment, but we will still have that pain. And those moments where we do get disappointed and we overcome and we have those joys, those are our characters. And then it gets applied to these larger issues that I wish that we didn't all have to fight for, but that is what we do. But it's so interesting asking that question, because it's like, yeah, who would we be? And it defines so much of us, but it's how we deal with those things is who we are. So it could be this, it could be apples that we're dealing with today. It could be oranges that we're dealing with today. It could be larger things. Yeah. And yeah, so what is, I love, there's a little voice in my ear right now. So just to close out, because we only have 2 minutes left, what is, and I'm just going to go by the order of my box here. What's next for you, MaJiK MC?
I am building a studio in Azusa Infinite Studios. It'll be a multi-creative workspace, recording and everything. And I would love to invite all of you to create with me there.
And you can follow them at NFNT Studios on Instagram. Awesome. I'm going in the order. Madima, what we got?
Up next, I also will be having a performance for Shock the Vote ATX. I'm originally from Texas. What I'm going to be doing is performing with a group of mine back in Texas called Hot Pot Comedy, as well as Y'all We Asian. They got a couple of improv sketches, a couple of improv things, some sketches, and then I'll be performing a song, and we're all just gonna have a great time. But it's all to get everybody out there mobilized to vote, especially in Texas. Don't believe what people are telling you, Texas. You are a swing state. I don't care what you think. It is not red. It is purple. Y'all are ready, and you've been ready. That's all I'll say. Also, you guys should check out at the end of the month, FPAC. I'm producing a segment with Lady B as well as Eddie Ghana of Sunday Jump. We currently have a fundraiser going on. You guys want to go check that out? We would really appreciate your help. Just celebrate Filipino culture with us and go vote. I'm just going to make sure, please vote. Please vote. Thanks. Awesome. Kooki, what you got for us?
Right now, I am in the process of putting together a multimedia book of poetry. And by multimedia, I mean there will be, of course, the printed page, but there'll also be audio and video available in the same book. So I'm still going through stuff, trying to figure out what goes in and what doesn't go in. But that's what I'm working on right now.
Amazing. Danski?
I'm developing another animated documentary about a lesbian living in an Islamic country. Hopefully it will be 20 minutes. That's what I'm working. Yeah.
Oh my God, that felt so heavy when she said it. And I was like, oh my God, I can't wait to see it. I can't wait to see more of your work. Leo.
So this Thursday is the start of October, which means it's Filipino American History Month. We're super excited because One Down is launching our first web series ever. It's called Breaking the Tabo. I kind of have my set here. Breaking the Tabo, if you know what a tabo is, it's kind of a Filipino item relegated to the bathroom. So our tagline is, Breaking the Tabo, let's talk real shit. And so with this 6-episode series, we're talking about difficult conversations that the Filipino culture doesn't like to talk about, from body shaming to is our food unhealthy, to representation in entertainment. Why don't we see Filipinos playing Filipino characters? It happens every single Thursday at 12 p.m. You can find us on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. But yeah, we're gonna start these conversations and we're really excited for it.
All day long. I'm excited about it too. For Palms Up Academy, we have the SIPA Gala, which One Down is also helping manifest. That's coming up. And FPAC, which we're producing, Madima. And Glimmer, the movie, is currently in Los Angeles Asian Pacific Film Festival. So that's available for screening, and there's going to be some artist conversations and a collaboration with Alejandro Films. And we're planning another drive-in, possibly. Well, definitely. One at Infinite Studios and another one possibly with Hi-Fi Kitchen. And Kooki's also producing a show that got postponed because of COVID that I was going to do, but I'm not now because it got postponed. But yeah, we're all doing things. Good. I know, right? Good people beget good people. I am so lucky and fortunate to be amongst all of you. Old, and not old in age, but old in relationships and newer in relationships. And so fortunate that we have found each other. Till next time. Yeah, I just stopped on my face. You guys are awesome! Are you guys okay?
Yes!
Body rolls. Body rolls. Oh, you guys did so good. I did the best I could.